di channel YouTube. Seperti biasa kita akan menantikan acara yang sangat menarik tentunya bagi kita semua. Terima kasih Tuhan, karena dalam pernyataan Tuhan Yesus kita dapat berkumpul bareng-bareng mengikuti acara yang sangat menarik tentunya. Tapi sebelum kita melakukannya, kita harus mengikuti protokol kesehatan, memakai masker, menjaga jarak, dan mencuci tangan dengan air yang mengalir, pakai sabun tentunya. Dan tidak lupa menikmati makanan bergizi, agar asupan gizi itu dapat menunjang kesehatan kita. Sebelumnya saya ucapkan terima kasih teman-teman. Mari kita ikuti bareng-bareng.
Physical integrity of bacterial lipid membranes. Am I clear? But it's not necessary you drill holes into your enemy. Do you think if you tie your enemy with the loin, and loin will eat up the enemy? This is one more way how complement work. Let me tell you how. Let's suppose this is a gram-positive bacteria. Of course, it must be VP, isn't it? Why? Why? Because complements have attacked. Why? Because antibody bind here. This bacteria is attacked, marked by the antibody. Antibody tail become active. Now you will tell me who will bind here? C1, and that will activate which one? C4, and what will remain there? C4B, and what will go away? C4A, and then what will bind here? C2B, and what will go away? Another apple, which is C2A. Is that right? And these two are called C3 convertase. So they will activate what? Yeah, C3B, and what? Another apple will go away. What is that? C3A. Right? Now you can say this bacteria is hooked with C1. Actually, bacteria was chained by the antibody. Tail of the antibody activated C1. C1 bound C4B and 2B, which activated C3B. So all these are sticking to what? Bacteria. Is that right? Now, what happens? That all of them are sticking together on the surface of bacteria. Am I clear? Is that clear? No problem? Now, who are the dangerous loins which eat up the bacteria? Neutrophil then macrophages. Neutrophil then macrophages. They love to eat up.
Nyanyiin jingle Shopee COD pakai kap Shopee 1, 2 Shopee COD, Shopee COD bayar langsung di tempat.
Bacteria, they eat up the particulate matter, particles. Look, imagine here is a neutrophil or macrophage, and it is trying to eat this bacteria. Whenever you try to eat bacteria, bacteria may slip out of its mouth. Is that right? But in it, it has a special pocket with which it can bind with C3B. But there is no complement bind with it. But look at another bacteria. This is a bacteria. This is the bacteria with C1, 4B, 2B, C3B. So C3B is there. Now, okay, A components will go away. Who is here? Macrophage. Actually, this portion of this is a special protein which is expressed on the neutrophil and macrophages, and this protein loves to stick with C3b. You get it? So if any bacteria is unfortunately having C3b attached with it, and this touch any neutrophil or macrophage, can this run away? It cannot run away. It's just like that I tie you with a very big dog with a chain. Chain consists of especially C3b. And now can you run away? Dog is there with you, isn't it? This is a special function of C3b. The C3b has receptors on the neutrophil and macrophage membranes, and whenever neutrophil or macrophage find a bacteria attached with C3b, right? So C3b will activate the receptor. This is called C3b receptor. This gives very powerful signal, gives a very, very happy signal to the macrophage internal side. Congratulations, we have a bacteria which is loaded with C3b, it will never go away, let's grab it. Super opportunity. I say simply, C3b enhances the phagocytosis. Bacteria can be phagocytosed without C3b, but slowly. If there are 10 bacteria here, without C3b, they will be phagocytosed slowly. But if there are 10 more bacteria, and on their surface, what is this? C3b molecules. C3b on one side are holding with the, sticking to bacteria, other side they can stick with the neutrophil or macrophage. It's just like bacteria now find, neutrophil or macrophage now find bacteria which are having the jam on it, and they will be eaten up very deliciously. Are you understanding it? Am I clear? So we can say C3b facilitate the phagocytosis of bacteria. Is that right? Any molecule which facilitate the phagocytosis process is called opsonin. What is the definition of opsonin? Opsonins are those molecules which on one side can bind with bacteria, on other side can bind with neutrophil or macrophages and hold the bacteria and neutrophil or macrophage together, and they facilitate the process of phagocytosis. So it means opsonin molecules amplify the phagocytic process. One of the opsonin molecules you right now know is C3b. There's one more you are supposed to know. Excellent, IgG. One of the antibody, look here. Now I will tell you something interesting. Let's suppose this is a very happy bacteria. Why? Because it does not have opsonin attached with it. If neutrophil try to eat it, it may fool that. Is that right? And neutrophil is really worried what is happening to it and having a lot of sweat to eat it. Right? Very sad neutrophil. Having tears. Opposite to that, here are two neutrophils which are very, very happy. Is that right? There's one neutrophil here and there's one more neutrophil here. Very, very happy. You know why they're happy? Because this bacteria is very sad. And why this bacteria is very sad? Because it has sticking to it C3b. On one side it sticks to bacteria, on other side it's sticking to the neutrophil, so it will be sure eaten up. Another is that another bacteria which does not have C3b but still very sad. Right? Why? Because it has antibody, especially IgG. IgG on one side bind with the bacteria, other side its tail become active as soon as it bind with the antibody. Either it will activate the complement system or it may interact directly with the receptor of neutrophil or macrophage. And this receptor is for which one? Which molecule? Fc portion of IgG. So it means neutrophil and macrophage have receptor for, neutrophil or macrophage have receptor for C3b receptor, as well as they have receptors for on their surface, Fc portion of IgG. Right? So any bacteria which is coated with C3b will be caught very effectively, or any bacteria which is coated with IgG will be caught by these neutrophil or macrophage very effectively. It is not only true about bacteria. Even if your RBCs are coated with IgG, you will be very rapidly phagocytosed by Macrophages. If your RBCs are coated with IgG molecule, they will be very rapidly phagocytosed by macrophages, and excessive breakdown of RBCs will be pathological hemolysis. Is that right? So if you produce autoantibodies, IgG, against your own RBC proteins, your RBCs will be very rapidly phagocytosed and you will develop hemolytic anemia. Anemia due to hemolysis, breakdown of the RBCs. Am I clear? So now we can define opsonization. What is opsonization? Opsonization is the process in which opsonin molecule bind on one side to the particulate matter, which may be a bacteria, which may be a tumor cell, or which may be our own cell like RBC. Opsonin molecule on one side bind with particulate matter, and on other side they bind with the receptors on phagocytic cells. And opsonin molecules enhance the phagocytosis of particulate matter. You must know two opsonin molecules, especially C3b and IgG. Am I clear? Now, let's see a very interesting thing. How antibodies can kill bacteria? How antibodies can kill bacteria? There are so many ways. You know, if wife wants to shout on the husband, she can shout in how many ways? Only husband knows, so many ways. In the same way, when antibodies are going to damage the bacteria, they have so many ways to do it, not only one way. Look, this is a bacteria, this is another bacteria. We'll look at only three ways. What are here? What is this? Yeah, antibodies. Here this antibody wanted in a simple way destroy the bacteria. It never activated the complement. It didn't take help of other community people. Antibodies stick with this and just activated the receptor on macrophage. And this bacteria will be very rapidly phagocytosed, and that process will be called direct opsonization, because complements are not involved. Antibody led to the direct opsonization of the bacteria. Is that right? Am I clear? Now, sometimes antibody like to play. How antibody likes to play? This antibody activate complement with it. So it will activate C1, right? Then C2b, C4b, yes. Then 2b, then C3b. The antibody has partially activated the complement. Then this C3b will stick to the receptor on I think it's not a very decent way to kill the bacteria. Antibody little bit played, activated little bit a series of complement system up to C3b, and then C3b stick to and especially activate the phagocytic cell. Please pick it up. Here antibody directly doing, here it is indirectly doing. This is also opsonization. This is also opsonization. This is opsonization by IgG. This is opsonization by C3b. We say this is direct opsonization and this is indirect opsonization. Indirect opsonization. Am I really clear? Hans? Understanding it? I'm so impressed, but not surprised. I know you understand sometimes. Now, sometimes antibodies say, okay, I don't want to take the help of. Antibody decide that it does not want to take help of.
Di InDriver, ajuin penawaranmu dan pilih tawaran yang pas. Tumpangan kamu bisa gini gak?
Antibody decide that it does not want to take help of neutrophil. Right? It just want to take the help of complement. Antibody binds with the bacteria and it is a very cruel way to kill. Now it will activate C1, 4B, 2B, both of them act as C3 convertase. Then they activate, it was here C3B. So what is this here? 3B. And then activate C, 5B, 6, 7, 8, 9, and all of them make a membrane attack complex, and this antibody keep on moving its tail, and this series remain active and keep on producing this terminal membrane attack complex. One membrane attack complex fall down, another C5 come, and again another attack complex form, so multiple holes are produced, right? It must be also very, very sad. Now you see how antibodies can kill bacteria. They can kill bacteria by direct opsonization. They can kill bacteria by indirect opsonization, or they can kill bacteria by activating the complements up to the terminal level until they produce multiple membrane attack complex and produce multiple holes. Am I clear? Let's recap what we were discussing. We have just discussed that there is a bacteria which was expressing antigens, and immune system has made specific antibodies against these antigens. If these antibodies belong to the group of class of IgG or IgM, once the antibody bind with the antigen, Fc portion of the antibody is activated. Which activate which protein? Complement number 1. Complement number 1, once it is activated, it hydrolytically break down complement number 4 and 2. Complement number 4 break down into A and B component. In the same way, complement number 2, C2 protein, also break down component A and B. B component remains bound with the whole chain, but A components go away. A for apple, apples are lost, right? Then what we discussed, that 4B and 2B, up to this, right, they are as C3 convertase. They will activate the C3 protein or C3 complement, and again A component of C3 is broken away and B component remain bound. Then what we discussed, C4B, 2B and C3B together, all of them make what they make? C5 convertase. C5 convertase is the power to break down C5 and convert into active form into B and A and B. A diffuses away and C5B remains bound, and up to this, these were early events. Late events are C5B. You know, C5B is part of late event. Up to this point is early. C5B will complex with C6, C7 and then 8 and 9, and all these 5 proteins, they make a pentameric hole, perforating pore, and this pore will be planted into bacterial membranes as membrane attack complex and destroy the bacteria. Right? Now, this pathway of activating the complement system is called classical pathway. It is a classical pathway of activating the complement. Right? One way to remember, you know, General Motors company, GM, they make classical cars. Right? So we can say, everyone remember, GM makes yes, classic car. Or you can simply say that IgG and IgM activate classical pathway. Is that clear? So this was one way to activate the complement system, right? But for this pathway you need antibodies. If you do not have antibodies, you cannot activate the complement system through this pathway. Can you? You cannot. But when bacteria comes to your body, it takes about 2 weeks to make enough antibodies to activate the complements and activate the classical pathway and to kill the bacteria. So can it be a first line of defense against bacteria? No. Because when bacteria first time enters into your body, do you have already antibodies? No, and it takes 1-2 weeks to produce antibodies. And if you really want to attack on the bacteria with the complements, as soon as bacteria come in your body, can you depend on antibodies? No. So there must be some other pathways to activate the complement system in which antibodies are not involved. And of course, they are not classical pathways. Let me tell you some other ways in which as soon as bacteria enters in our body, complements start coming in touch with the surface of the bacteria and start getting activated. Is that right? What is that pathway? Let me show you another pathway of activation of complements. In that pathway, there are some certain surface molecules on virus envelope, or some surface molecules on fungal cell wall, or there are some surface molecules on bacterial surface. They can activate the complements. Complements can be directly activated when they come in touch with virus envelope, viral envelopes, or fungal cell walls, or bacterial surface molecules. Let's take example of bacteria. This bacteria has just entered into your body, and it has entered first time. When it has entered first time, do you think you have the antibodies against it? No. But it may have some certain surface feature. For example, gram-negative bacteria have a special type of protein on their surface. Not protein, rather a special lipopolysaccharide complex, which is called endotoxins. Endotoxins are special surface molecules present on the surface of gram-negative bacteria. Usually they are absent on the surface of gram-positive bacteria. And endotoxins are structurally a complex of lipid and carbohydrate. That is why endotoxins are endotoxins. Endotoxins are called lipopolysaccharide, lipids with multiple saccharides. Let's suppose that this is endotoxin or some other surface molecule. Now, these lipopolysaccharides or endotoxin molecules are present on the surface of which bacteria? Gram-positive or gram-negative? Gram-negative especially. In the same way, there is some molecules similar to this, not exactly, are present on fungus or viral envelope. They are not lipopolysaccharide, but they can work like lipopolysaccharide to activate the complement. What really happens, as soon as this bacteria enters in our body and start damaging the tissue, inflammatory response start around it, blood vessels start dilating, and endothelial cells shrink, and complements will come out. Right? When complements will come and touch it, now something very important. That complement number 3 will directly touch it and become active. Look at it. This is complement number 3. And of course, as soon as it becomes active, it loses the which component? C3A. Later on, I will tell you the functions of A components later on. Right? And what is this now? C3B. So we can say there are certain surface molecules or virus envelope or fungal cell membranes or bacterial surfaces. There are some molecules on which as soon as C3 touches it, it breaks down into A and B components. Am I clear? So what has become active? C3B. Now, again, once C3B is activated by the surface molecule, right, it will make a domain which will react with another protein. And that protein, the second protein, it has also lost the apple. This protein is called, its name is B name. So protein B, again thank God, maybe they could call this Waldemar protein or some difficult name. Thank God they just call it B protein. Of course not baby, B protein. And B protein, when it touches the C3B, it also breaks down into BA and B. It's difficult to understand. So on the surface of the bacteria, there are certain molecules which activate C3B. C3B activate B protein and break down into BB and BA component. A goes away. Now what is this complex called? C3B, BB. What is the name of this complex? These two things together. C3B, BB. together can activate one more C3b. This is acting as C3 convertase. These two together are acting as C3 convertase. Is that right? And these C3 convertase molecule, right, which is C3b, BB, right, this will bind one more C3. And that C3 will again lose an apple. What is this? C3a, and what will be left behind? C3b. Now, these two together were called C3 convertase. But now, these one more C3b together, all of this is called C5 convertase. What is this? C5 convertase. Is that right? Again, let's remember. What was there? Surface molecule. What bound? C3, B, then B, both of them together. C3 convertase, then another C3B, and now together called C5 convertase. And the remaining story is the same. That what will bind here? C5B, and what will go away? C5A. C5B, remaining story is same. 6, 7, 8, 9 going to attack. So terminal pathway is same in previous. Now C5B, 6, 7, 8, 9. All this complex is same as in classical pathway. So this is called final common pathway. C5B, 6, 7, 8, 9 was present in the previous pathway as well as in this pathway. So this is final common pathway in both activation. But initial steps are different. But both pathways produce C5 convertase before they activate the final events. Am I clear? So this pathway is called, of course it is not classical pathway. It is an alternative way to activate the complement system. So again, thank God they did not put a funny name to it. They simply call it alternate pathway. Alternate pathway of activating complements. That's so simple. So how many pathways you know now? Classical pathway and alternate pathway. What is the difference? Which is more when bacteria first time come in touch with your surfaces? Alternate pathway is activated or classical pathway is activated? Alternate pathway. Which is more important as first line of defense? Alternate pathway. First line of defense when bacteria come in your body is alternate pathways. And look, when bacteria enter, which will be first activated? Alternate pathway. And once antibodies are activated, produced, then which pathway can be activated? Classical pathway. Are you clear? Now, you can compare it. It's so simple. This is one bacterium, this is another bacterium. Now, if this is the antigen, here is also antigen. Is that right? You have to tell me, what is this pathway? Antibody? C1, yes, you tell me. 4, 2, what is this? C3 convertase, then 3, of course BBBs remain there, apples go away. Now it's together, what is this? C5 convertase. And then what is it? 5B, 6, 7, 8, 9. Clear? Now you look at this. Suppose endotoxins. What is first? C3, B. Then what is binding? BB. Then what is there? C3B. Now, these two together were convertase and all of them are? I think you know complement system too well. I don't know who taught you. Now what is this? B, then 7. Oh, you know counting. Good. 9. Right? Now this pathway here and here, this is, what is that? What is that it called? Final common pathway or terminal events or related events in complement activation. So this is classical pathway. This is alternate pathway. This is activated later once antibodies are produced against the bacteria, this is activated immediately as soon as bacteria invade your body, right? This pathway is dependent on presence of IgG, IgM. This pathway is activated without antibodies. This pathway involves C1. That pathway does not involve C142. So classical pathway activate C142, right? And in classical pathways, C3 convertase is antigen antibody C1. They are the initial event. Then they activate C4 and C2. C4 and C2, C4b and C2b are the C3 convertase of classical pathway. But C3b, BB are the C3 convertase of alternate pathway. Is that right? Then, of course, C3b will bind here as well as there. This whole complex will become C5 convertase. These will become also C5 convertase. And then final common pathway. Is it difficult to understand? It's easy, isn't it? It's dangerously easy. Okay. So this was another. Then there is one more way they have discovered recently. There is one more way some bacteria can activate the complement system. Is that right? What is that? Actually, they found sometimes bacteria can activate the complements on their surface, right? Without having antibodies and even without having endotoxins. Because endotoxins are present on gram negative. But sometimes complements are directly activated on the surface of gram positive also. So then they were thinking, and there was no antibody. They said on gram positive bacteria, if complements are directly activating and there is no antibody, it cannot be classical. And if there is no endotoxin, this cannot be alternate. There must be something else. Now they know it. That on some bacterial surface, or many bacterial surface, they are having a special molecule which is called menin. What is the name of this molecule? Menin molecules. Menin molecules. Is that right? Now, actually, from our blood, a special type of protein which is normally present, that is called menin binding lectin. That comes from there. And that loves to bind with? That loves to bind with menin. And this protein is named in a very simple way, not called protein Abdul or protein Hassan, no, very simple name. Menin binding lectins. This belongs to a group of lectins. So menin binding lectin proteins are normally present in our blood. And as soon as these proteins bind with surface molecules of menin on the surface of certain bacteria, these proteins become active. And they activate certain proteolytic enzyme. They activate certain proteolytic enzymes, and these proteolytic enzymes which are activated by menin binding lectins, they actually, now you know what will happen, they actually, yes, they break down C4 into what is binding here, C4b, and which will go away, C4a. And they can also activate, what is this, C2b, and what is lost there, C2a. What is this produced? Please tell me. Yes, C3 convertase, like the C3 convertase of classical pathway. But we cannot call it classical pathway because it does not have antibodies. It does not have C1. Is that right? Remaining events are like classical pathway. You know, once C3 convertase is there, of course it will activate which one? C3b. And now the apple which has gone out, fragment which has gone away is C3a. The remaining story I think must be clear to you people. What is there? Yeah? C5, B, 6, 7, 8, 9. Final common pathway. Look at. Now compare and contrast. This was your classical pathway. Classical pathway of complement activation. This was your alternate pathway of complement activation. And what is this? Yeah, very easy. Menin binding lectin pathway, or lectin pathway simply. Lectin pathway of complement activation. So now you have three pathways. They have something common. What is the common? They have a common final pathway. That all of them produce membrane attack complex, but in early steps they differ from each other. Is that right? Now, already you know classical pathway is activated only when you have antibodies against bacteria, especially which group? IgG and IgM. Is that right? Those classes of antibodies. Alternate pathway is activated when antibody even are not present. Without the presence of antibodies, alternate pathway can be activated as a first line of defense. Just some proteins touch the surface and complement system is activated. Right? What do you think? In this case, antibodies are involved? No. So, when bacteria come in your body, this pathway is activated early or late? Early. Because we don't need antibodies. Antibody takes time to build up. But menin is exposed on the surface of bacteria, and menin binding proteins are normally present in our blood. Do you get it? Is that right? And of course, this pathway is acting like innate immune response. Innate immune responses which is non-specifically activated against multiple organisms and which is present naturally in your body and which with repeated exposure which does not boost up. That is called innate immunity. So this is an example of innate immunity, and this is also an example of innate immunity. Your skin provides innate immunity. Skin is normally present, either bacteria come or not. And repeated attack of bacteria will not increase the skin to augment, I hope. Is that right? So this is an example of innate. In the same way, this pathway, alternate, and this is example of innate. This is dependent on antibodies. And antibodies are acquired after the exposure to the antigen or bacteria. So this is helping, this part of the complement system is helping the acquired immunity. Now look, do you think immune system will work well without complement proteins? No. So it means complement proteins augment the function of immune system. Or complement proteins complement the function of immune system. Is that clear? Okay. We have talked about that what are the function of C5b, 6, 7, 8, 9. They will produce perforations. Is that right? But we have also talked about C3b, which act as what kind of molecule? Oxalin molecule. But we did not talk about all this huge group of A. Apples are also doing certain functions. Should I tell you? You want to really know that these broken fragments are really useful or not? These broken hearts also do some functions. Right? Let me tell you what they do.